even though it's encased inside your skull. But the overpressures and the injuries to the brain, the unseen wounds of war, for example, those can be serious, or they can be not so serious. It depends on the individual. It depends on the proximity to the blast. And sometimes they are lifelong. Sometimes they resolve themselves within weeks or months.
On Wall Street, the Dow by 125 points. The Nasdaq rose 23. The S&P advanced 10. More on these stories at townhall.com.
If your family depends on your income and something happened to you, what would happen to them? You need life insurance, and SelectQuote can help you get it at a price you can afford.
SelectQuote found Jacob, 40, who's in excellent health, a 10-year, $500,000 policy for only $19 a month.
Not in perfect health? Don't worry.
SelectQuote found Tanya, 40, who has type 2 diabetes, a 10-year, $500,000 policy for only $32 a month.
We shop companies like Protective, Prudential, American General, and others to find you the company with the best rates. Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford.
For your free quote, call 1-800-880-7474. That's 1-800-880-7474. Or go to SelectQuote.com. That's 1-800-880-7474.
SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Get full details on the example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Your premium could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
Vladimir Putin has pardoned an Israeli woman who's been jailed in Russia on drug charges. The latest from the Media Line's Lawrence Rifkin.
Israeli-American backpacker Naama Issachar arrived in Israel on Thursday after being granted a pardon by Russian President Vladimir Putin. She had been in a Russian prison over a small amount of cannabis, but it is widely believed that she was a hostage of sorts, Moscow's goal being to prevent Israel from extraditing a Russian hacker to the U.S. The hacker was extradited, and Issachar was given 7 years. Her release follows weeks of negotiations that reportedly included demands for Jerusalem property owned by the White Russian Church. She arrived on a plane with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whom critics accused of grandstanding in the lead-up to crucial elections. I'm Lawrence Rifkin, Town Hall News, Jerusalem.
News and analysis at themedialine.org and townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. Two presidential campaigns are spending big bucks to advertise during Sunday's Super Bowl.
The campaigns for President Trump and Democratic presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg are each spending $10 million for 60 seconds of airtime during the game. Bloomberg will highlight his efforts to combat gun violence, and the president focuses on the economy.
America is stronger, safer, and more prosperous than ever before.
It's a chance for both candidates to face off during the year's most watched television event. Greg Clugston, the White House.
The Hummer, once a gas-guzzling target for environmentalists, is making a comeback. General Motors announced Thursday it'll start selling a battery-powered Hummer pickup truck in September of 2021. At least part of the new Hummer will be shown in a 30-second television ad featuring basketball star LeBron James during the second quarter of Sunday's Super Bowl. More on these stories available at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
Welcome to this evening's episode of Rush Hour. I am your host, Kelly Rush, and we are a production of America Matters Media, the home of quality conversation. You can check us out on the web at americamatters.us. That's americamatters.us, and we are also on Facebook at facebook.com/Reno Rush Hour. That is also my Twitter handle, so you can follow me there and like me on the Reno Rush Hour Facebook page. And this is an interactive program. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the world, 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255, and or message us on the Facebook comments box watch party thing. I've got all this. I had to reboot the computer because there was no connection, so I had to get that all going again and all that stuff. So I've got a special guest today, and this is Rick Cornell. He has a show with us. He is a wonderful appellate attorney here in Reno, in Northern Nevada. Are you duly licensed in California as well?
Well, I was, but I let it go. Too much weird stuff going on the other side of the border for me. And I shouldn't say more, so I won't. But I've got plenty enough to do as it is. And I do appear before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the federal system, and that's in San Francisco.
Sure.
Right. So I'm not totally divorced from California.
Gotcha. And so you also have a show here with Bill Kendall and Todd Torvinen every Tuesday from noon to 1 called State Your Case, and that's a lot of fun. I love that show, and you guys have such a great time kicking around all different kinds of different cases, scenarios, just current events, as it pertains to the law and legality and just general,
Yeah, the show's really morphed. It started off with us talking about our practices and issues and problems that we see day to day, but it's kind of morphed into a free-for-all discussion on issues that are currently involved nationwide and sometimes locally. And we all throw in our 3 cents worth based on the laws we know it to be, although a lot of times what the law is in Nevada is not going to be the same as the law in, say, Alabama. But it's a lot of fun. It's an intellectual exercise for me, certainly. I enjoy it a lot, and I enjoy Bill and Todd. They're great guys.
Yeah, they
and very
really
good
are.
lawyers too.
Excellent. And Todd does family law and trust law and things like that.
Right.
And
Bill, personal injury. That's right.
Personal injury. And all excellent at what they do. So, and you are here today to discuss primarily a show that you're putting on, because you are also a very talented singer and musician.
Yeah, well, as you can tell from my speaking voice, I'm a bass baritone. And indeed, that's what's happening. I'm doing a one-person show, or really two, me and the accompanist. And we're doing this on February 8th, which is a Saturday, at 7:30 p.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Nevada, which is down on Del Monte. I think it's 830 Del Monte. If you take that roundabout that goes to Neal Road, you don't go this far as Neal Road. You go to Del Monte, and it's the second building on the left. And what I'm doing is a show called The Real Fabulous 50s, 1947 to 1963. And what I'm doing on my own is singing a wide number of genres in American non-classical music. I maintain that 16-year period is when American non-classical music exploded, and we saw the kind of creativity in music that we have not seen before, and in my opinion, we have not seen since. But in that 16 years, we saw it. We think of the real, the fabulous 50s is when rock and roll was born, and yeah, that's certainly true, it was. But not just that. That was the era when country music exploded. If you saw that documentary on PBS, the Ken Burns on country music, you know that to be so. It's also the era where folk music exploded. It was at its height. It was also an era where jazz exploded. It was arguably at its height. Certainly, it went into more directions in that 16 years than any other time in its history. It also was a period where international song was huge, and I'll be singing about that. And, of course, this was the era of the Rat Pack. We've never seen anything like the Rat Pack since then. I mean, think about this. You have a marquee at the Sands or the Aladdin or the Frontier that says, "Tonight, Dean, maybe Frank, maybe Sammy," the three most influential singers of their time on one stage at one time. Can you imagine tonight, now, a marquee in Vegas at you pick it, Wynn Las Vegas or Caesars. This is "Tonight, Bruno, maybe Pitbull, maybe Drake."
Right.
Probably not
Genuine,
Hozier.
right?
Yeah, impossible. You wouldn't see it. But in those days, you did. And it was also the era.
Boy bands were as close as we get nowadays. I mean, and that was 20 years ago even.
Yeah, that's true. And it was the era of some of the greatest love songs ever written. Something a little better than Tina's Got a Big Old Butt, I swore I'd be true, so I'm leaving you. Yeah, a little more tender than that. I mean, it really was a time of
I got the rollie and I'm in the,
It was just
Lambo.
a time of great, great music, and I'm going to try to cover it all in a mere hour and a half. That will not be easy, but by golly, I'm going to do it.
No medleys?
Oh, yeah, that's the only way to do it. I've got several medleys in this. For example, a Patsy Cline medley. I'm going to do Walking After Midnight, I Fall to Pieces, and Crazy in one medley, Nice. But if you're going to cover Patsy Cline, by golly, I think that's the way to do it. And a medley from the Brill Building in New York City for rock and roll. That's a real interesting story. In fact, researching this, I found an awful lot of real interesting stories about this music, which, I'm happy to share in the next segment of the show. But anyway, the show's going to be February 8 at 7:30, $15 in advance or $20 at the door.
Very cool. Well, we will be right back after these messages with Kelly Rush and Rick Cornell talking about Rick's show coming up on February 8th after these messages. Stay tuned.
MichaelsReno.com.
What was that?
Michaels Power Sports on South Virginia in Reno. Dirt bikes, quads, snow vehicles, parts, service.
Do you think they'll have the parts to fix my Yamaha?
Michaels Reno has the largest selection of off-road snow and dirt vehicles and parts inventory in all of northern Nevada, as well as Lake Tahoe. Of course they have the parts. See ya!
Now, how am I going to get there?
So here's the choice. Some people say the USA is finished. It's evil, a has-been, full of hate and injustice. The U.S. Constitution should be trashed and the Bill of Rights abolished. No free speech, no gun ownership. Competition and free markets are bad. We're all too stupid. For our own good, the government must own everything and know all your secrets.
Other people say that America has created the freest, richest, happiest, most generous society that has ever existed in the world. That's why millions of people are desperate to come here and escape their brutal lives in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and 100 other countries.
In America, we have the right to succeed, the right to our own living, the right to have a family, the right to believe in God, the right to have our own ideas, the right to be safe and secure, and the right to be left alone.
Where do you stand? Help us save the Constitution and restore the American dream. Go to SaveMyFreedom.com.
Brought to you by the American Media Council.
Rich is just a really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit AdoptUSKids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
This overload. Shannon Lawson here. Join us for the Nevada Radio Roundup, Fridays at 2 p.m. A good news variety show all about the local scene. The Nevada Roundup, Friday at 2.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
And welcome back to the second segment of today's Rush Hour. I am your host, Kelly Rush, and I am with Rick Cornell of the POPRA Group, which is really a wonderful, wonderful organization. And Rick is putting on his own one-man show, The Fabulous 50s, 1947 to 1963, coming up next Saturday, February 8th, and it's happening at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Nevada, and that's at 7:30. And tickets will be available at the door, but you can get them in advance. Rick, what's that phone number?
The phone number is area code 775-233-5105. If you order them in advance, it's $15. If you wait to pay at the door, it's $20. So save $5. Order in advance. You can also do that through the Popper website, which is popperanv.org.
Oh, okay. And I'll put that too. And so, what made you cover that particular era, 47 to 63? That's kind of odd.
It is odd, but there's a connection, and it's this. Well, first off, the idea came to me because I've been a prominent and featured soloist with Popra ever since we started in late 2014. And I found that the solos that I was doing, except for shows that are era-specific, like we do a show on the 80s, obviously I'm going to sing a song from the 80s, where it wasn't era-specific, I kept picking songs from this era, and I thought, well, I'm a child of the 50s, I'm picking songs from the fabulous 50s, apparently, but when I would study when they were written and when they were performed, I thought, no, actually, it's 1947 to 1963. And I started thinking, I said, is there a reason for that? Is there a connection? And I thought about it, said, yeah, there actually is. Think about those 2 years and what bookends them, both musically and politically. Musically, it was the rise of Tin Pan Alley, post-World War II, to just before the Beatles and the other Brits invaded America, ended up on Ed Sullivan and really changed the face of American music in the process. Politically, 1947 and 1963 is the rise of the Cold War, post-World War II, to JFK's assassination at the end of 63. And when you think about it, what happened in between? What happened in between was a lot of paranoia, a lot of fear, a lot of angst, existential angst. Think about this. This was the era where, and I was born in 1952, so I remember it very well, as will any listener who was born around that time. When you went to school, no matter where you went to school, you had to learn duck for cover drills. Mm-hmm. Get under your desk and put your hands at the base of your neck. Duck because the Russians may drop the bomb on your little rural school in the plains of Kansas or northern Ohio. And is that going to save your life? Well, they didn't tell us otherwise. Or if your parents didn't have one, somebody down the street did in your neighborhood, a fallout shelter. Complete with about 2 weeks of potable water, corned beef hash, Vienna wieners, and spam. And now, are you going to be able to outlast nuclear fallout with that? Well, they didn't tell us otherwise, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, it was an era of that kind of fear and that kind of angst. And I maintain that what happened as a result when you're in that frame of mind is you tend to listen to people. We learn an awful lot by listening, not so much by talking. Right? And when we listen to people and we're willing to co-opt ideas a little more, and I think that's what happened. When you look at rock and roll, what was that? That came out of a bunch of different traditions, rhythm and blues primarily. Mm-hmm. You look at jazz, where did that come from? Kind of the same thing. Country music today has a very distinct sound. Back then, not so much. They were searching for the sound, and they were willing to borrow from gospel and rockabilly and bluegrass and folk and so forth. In fact, did you know that the number one folk album in 1959 was the Kingston Trio? Country album. The Kingston Trio. They didn't have a category for folk at that point. That was the number one song, country album, the Kingston Trio. Anyway, during this era, you sense that there was an awful lot of creativity going on. Musicians trying to find the right sound, trying to borrow from other genres, trying to see what works. Classic example, 1955, Eddie Arnold in country writes the best song about unrequited love ever, You Don't Know Me. Who picks that up in 1962 and makes it a number one hit? a soul singer, Ray Charles, rhythm, you mix rhythm and blues and country. I mean, imagine that today. I understand that has happened, and somehow there was a song or a piece of music that had a meld of rap and country. I don't think it did really well, but yet here in 1962, in the height of the civil rights movement, we can have a mix of soul and country, and it goes to #1. I think that was the kind of thing that was going on then, and that was why. And, you can agree or disagree, but what I don't think you can disagree on is this was an era where American non-classical music just exploded. And think of jazz. We went from bop to hard bop to post bop to modal to free jazz, all in that 16-year period. Jazz transformed itself that much. International. You think of so many examples of foreign songs that came over here and became Americanized. I'm going to do 4 of them. I'll give you an example. I'm going to do the Mexican song, Quien Será. You know what song that is? Sway. When marimba rhythms start to play, dance with me. Yeah, that was originally a Mexican song called Quien Será. And now one I'm not going to sing, but here's a classic example. De Fille Morte. De Fille Morte. You know what that song is? It sounds French. It is. Autumn Leaves. Autumn Leaves was originally a French song that came across here, and Johnny Mercer added the lyrics and becomes one of the most covered standards of all in the Great American Songbook. But I mean, this was the kind of thing that was going on in that era, and I don't think it's going on now, and hasn't in a while, that we were willing to co-opt music from overseas. Well, another classic example, one that I'm doing, Garota de Ipanema. Okay, you know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that song started the bossa nova craze, and of course Getz Gilberto was the best-selling jazz album of all time, and that happened in the early 60s, 1962 and 63. Interesting story about that one is when Stan Getz decided he wanted to record a bunch of Antonio Carlos Jobim songs and went to Rio, his problem was he didn't speak Portuguese, and the musicians that he was playing with, Laurindo Almeida and Jobim and the rest, didn't speak English. How are they going to do this? Well, Astrud Gilberto, who was the great Joao Gilberto's wife, happened to be bilingual. And when they played Garota de Ipanema, Getz was bowled over. He was transfixed and said, "What does that mean?" She translated, and he loved it so much, he said, "Let's record it and keep the translation and have Joao Gilberto sing the first voice, Oye, que cosa mais linda, mais cheia de graça, in Portuguese, and then she came in with the second verse, tall and tan and young and lovely, and so forth, and that's how that recording came to be. So this kind of stuff was going on during this era, and it was just marvelous, really, how that happened. And like I say, the love songs that went on in this time. There are musicologists say, oh, no, the time of the best love songs was before that, in the 30s and 40s, when you had the Gershwins and Irving Berlin and Richard Rodgers and Jerome Kern and so forth. Yeah, probably so, but even so, in the 50s, there are just some great love songs that were done, and I'll do actually 4 of them, two in a medley. One, the #1 song the year of my birth, which was You Belong to Me, sung by Joe Stafford, if you remember that one. One that's a medley of 2 of the greatest love songs ever, which is Harry Warren's The More I See You and Sammy Kahn's All the Way, which he wrote for Sinatra and became one of the Sinatra's signature songs. And then, to me, the greatest love song ever, and what's amazing about this is it was written by a guy named Eden Abbas. You probably never heard of Eden Abbas. Nobody's heard of Eden Abbas. He was the original one-hit wonder, and he wrote the song. It was Nature Boy, which, by the way, I think the best cover of Nature Boy ever was by David Bowie in the movie Moulin Rouge. I think that's the gold standard for that song. But, I mean, it was huge in the fabulous 50s, and, of course, it was a Nat King Cole song during that time. So, that's the thing with this concert, is exploring all that and hopefully demonstrating not only that this was the best, most creative era of music, but why that may have been so. So that's the show in a nutshell, I guess you could say, for a little over an hour and a half.
Neat.
Yeah.
Neat. Well, it's kind of like a cultural tour.
Well, that's what I intended it to be, is exactly that. Of course, I'll end up with rock and roll, and I'll finish the show with the song that Simon Cowell, no less, says is the greatest song ever written.
Really?
And it came from German opera.
Well, why don't you hold on to that?
I'll hold on to that so you people can listen and find out the answer.
There you go. Let our listeners hang through the break and give them a little cliffhanger there.
Yeah, and I can also tell you the famous Elvis song that's really a borrowed version of one of the great Italian art songs ever written.
Interesting.
You'll find that one out too.
Very cool.
And I'll sing it, of course.
Of course. Well, we will be back for the second half of today's Rush Hour with Kelly Rush from Cornell. After these messages, please stay tuned.
It's sweet. There's no place like it. And as we all know, it's where the heart is. Home. It matters. I'm Grant Brewer with Home at Last, a housing program of Nevada Rural Housing Authority. Join me and expert guests every Tuesday at 4 p.m. on KCKQ 1180 for Home Matters, a show dedicated to all things, well, home. Each week, I chat with the industry's best: lenders, real estate professionals, builders, insurance experts, home inspectors, developers, and specialized housing program experts. They grace the mic, and we dig into today's hot housing topics. Tune in to Home Matters each Tuesday at 4 p.m. at 1180 a.m. KCKQ, the home of community radio. Or listen live and listen again online at americamatters.us. Join us.
Welcome to my house. It's my house.
Do you need high-quality estate planning and family law services? I'm Reno attorney Todd Torvinen. I practice in the areas of estate planning, probate, family law, and divorce taxation. I'm also experienced in probate and family law litigator and believe that prevailing in any litigation requires diligent, methodical preparation. As a certified estate planning law specialist and certified public accountant, I'm singularly qualified to analyze the financial aspects of marital, family assets, or a decedent's estate. A large part of my practice is done in real time. It means that preparation of estate planning and family law documents occurs with the client present, and they're reviewed with the client at the time the client is there. Your documents are examined line by line and explained to you, then modified based upon your input. This client-focused approach leverages the current technology and enhances the attorney-client communication and relationship. The idea is to produce a better product. Please call me at 775-825-6066 to schedule an appointment today. Again, 775-825-6066.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't sat in your lap in months. And even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover guitar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station, the power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now back to the show.
And welcome back to the second half of today's Rush Hour. I am your host, Kelly Rush, and I am with Rick Cornell. And Rick, you are an appellate attorney here in town, and you are also a performer with Popra, which is a local performing group here in town. And you are putting on a show on February 8th. It's a one-man show that is called The Fabulous 50s, well, 1947 to 1963. And it's kind of a cultural musical tour, and it's you've been telling us about that, and it's fascinating. And you said there's kind of a surprise there.
Well, yeah. In researching this, I've discovered a number of interesting things. Now, I had mentioned the song that Simon Cowell thinks is the greatest song ever written. It goes back to German opera. The opera was the Threepenny Opera. And the song, as originally sung by Lotte Lenya, was a very dreary, doleful tune. By the way, you may remember Lotte Lenya. You remember her from Russia with Love, the first Bond? She was the red-haired gal with the knives and the shoes. Yeah, that was Lotte Lenya.
I gotcha.
And she was married to, I think it was Bertolt Brecht, or no, Kurt Weill. It was Brecht and Weill who wrote the opera. Anyway, 30 some odd years later, it came to America, although actually Louis Armstrong was the one who really turned it from dreary and doleful to something much more upbeat. And then in 1959, Bobby Darin got a hold of the song and made it the most finger-snapping song ever, to an ode to a stone-cold sociopath. It was Mac the Knife. And that Mac the Knife is what Simon Cowell thinks is the greatest song ever written.
Wow.
Interesting, huh?
Interesting.
And I said, and I'm doing also Elvis Presley's It's Now or Never. Now, he sold 20 million records with that recording in 1960, and I'm sure you know the song. But what you may not know, but you will know after I get done with it, is that song is actually the most famous Italian art song recast to a rumba beat. You have any idea what it is? It's Now or Never is also O Sole Mio.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
How about that?
How
about that? And all kinds of things. Here's another one. Who is the only singer in our history who was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the Gospel Music Hall of Fame? You have any idea? You're thinking hard. The Man in Black.
Oh, sure.
And I'll do a Johnny Cash, too, because, you can't cover this era without referencing Johnny Cash. I'll do I Walk the Line. Here's another little tidbit. I'll open the show, a little bit out of the era with a Tom Lehrer song, So Long Mom, his ode to World War III, done in George M. Cohan style. Now, we haven't heard from Tom Lehrer in a while. I mean, he was huge in the Real Fabulous 50s, and he performed all the way up to about 1972, and then he retired. You know what he did after he retired? He was a mathematics professor at UC Santa Cruz.
Huh.
So, yeah, you'll learn all kinds of fascinating little facts like that. What is the greatest selling Italian song in history? And I'll sing it. And the reason it's the greatest is even though Dean Martin made a monster hit out of it, the original has actually sold more worldwide than Dean Martin's version did. You know what song I'm referencing? Volare.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it was written by Domenico Modugno, and actually they brought him out to America, and he performed it on Ed Sullivan. And if you go on YouTube, you can find it. Domenico Modugno singing his song to American audiences on Ed Sullivan. So, yeah, like I say, all kinds of fascinating little factoids like that you'll see, hear, and learn in this show. And, I try to do these that they're interesting in that way, a little bit educational and as well as entertaining. I think that's part of being entertained, is learning stuff like that you may not have known beforehand. So that's what I'm going to do or try to do. I can't reference rock and roll without referencing doo-wop. But that's hard to do with one singer because doo-wop is basically a lead singer and a bunch of backup singing harmony. But I came up with one, and it was the main song in the movie American Graffiti. In fact, young Ron Howard and young Cindy Williams danced cheek to cheek on the last night of high school to this song. You know which one it is? Since I Don't Have You by Jimmy Beaumont and the Skyliners.
Wow.
So, yep, all of that good stuff. And some of this I have covered in Popra before. For example, 5 years ago, we had a show based on Masquerade. And with everybody else doing Masquerade and this Masquerade and so forth, I decided to do something a little different, and I did the song The Masquerade Is Over, which was a main song on Nancy Wilson's album with Cannonball Adderley, which jazz singers voted as the best vocal jazz album of all time. But this song to me fits perfectly with Lady Day's Good Morning Heartache, so I do a medley of those two songs together. And there are others that I have done. La Vie en Rose, we did a French show, and I sang that one. But a lot of these I'm doing for the first time. Popra itself does 4 dinner shows a year plus a Christmas show, so really 5 dinner shows a year, and we pick different themes for each show. We perform currently at the Napa Sonoma restaurant over in, I forget what the name of the shopping center is, there on South Virginia and Longley. It's in the restaurant.
Winter's Crossing.
Winter's Crossing, that's the one, and where the old Austin's restaurant used to be. Yeah, that's where we perform. And we perform to audiences of like 60, but we do 2 shows a gig, and we're getting to the point where they're selling out fast. So if you've never seen one of our shows and you enjoy this kind of music, you're really going to want to come see it, but you're going to want to get there. You're going to want to book your ticket early because they're selling out fast. In fact, this year we're doing a Broadway show. For the first time, we're going to add a 3rd show just to see what happens. I think that with that kind of theme, we can find 180 people willing to pay the money to see the show and eat dinner at the Napa Sonoma restaurant, which is a good restaurant.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and very reasonably priced for what you get. So anyway, that's what we do, and we do fundraisers besides that, and we're basically able to make the money to pay the bills. But it's been an education for me. I was president of the board of directors of Sierra Music Society, which is the 501c3 corporation that runs it, and I finally decided to step down so that our very talented and capable vice president could ascend to the presidency. But it's been an education for me on how to run a nonprofit arts organization. I mean, you don't just say, hey, we're a bunch of overgrown kids who want to do a show and take it to Broadway. It's infinitely more complex than that, and it's been an interesting education to see just how complicated it is. But bottom line is we formed in November of 14, and we're still going strong, and we are not in the red. We can keep going for a little while longer. So.
Yeah, and that's impressive. I mean, it's, any kind of fundraising is difficult.
Oh, yeah. Well,
when you're depending on the, the generosity of, of your peers. It's.
Well, and what the way we formed is originally we were the Nevada Opera Chorus. And the Nevada Opera Chorus appeared to us to be dying and refusing to admit it in 2014, which is why we split off and formed Popra. Then it officially died in 2016. But, there are a lot of people out there in the area who miss it, us included. And we will do an opera piece or 2 in these shows, but they really are eclectic. The name Popra says it all. It's from pop to opera. And so if we have a show about drinking songs, we may do the Brindisi from La Traviata, or when we did that show, I may do Minnie the Moocher. Whatever works. It's a real broad array of musical styles, but thus far it's working. And, who knows? Maybe opera will return to Northern Nevada. A lot of things would have to happen for that to be so, but
sure. Well, I mean,
you never know. This area is growing so much.
And that's why we have the Pioneer Center with the acoustics it has, where we can bring in opera, on occasion if we want to. And then if there comes a time where there's a call for it more permanently, then we have that ability.
Well, yeah. I don't know if you've seen any of the Broadway Comes to Reno shows, but the technicians do such a fantastic job with those. I mean, they really do. And I mean, I just saw the one.
We have talent. We have venues. We have,
Yeah, and those shows sell out way in advance.
Sure.
Give them a good product and build it, and they will come.
Well, that's the beauty of a town like Reno. We don't need it full time. We don't need it all the time. We have the capability, to bring it in and make it a special event, make it an exclusive thing and do it from time to time.
Yeah. And then there's Art Town.
We're not saturated. And then we have Art Town.
For a whole month.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do it right here. We do it right.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that you can be proud about when you call us the biggest little city, because this is the kind of thing that a city may do. But here we are. We've been doing this since we were a city of 40,000 people. So
yeah, do it right. Don't overdo it.
Yeah, that's
it.
And
then we keep our essence.
Yeah.
So we've got to go to another break. We'll be back for the fourth and final segment of today's Rush Hour with Kelly Rush and my special guest Rick Cornell of Popra after these messages. Stay tuned.
MichaelsReno.com.
What was that?
Michaels Power Sports on South Virginia in Reno. Dirt bikes, quads, snow vehicles, parts, service.
Do you think they'll have the parts to fix my Yamaha?
Michaels Reno has the largest selection of off-road snow and dirt vehicles and parts inventory in all of Northern Nevada, as well as Lake Tahoe. Of course they have the parts. See ya!
Now, how am I going to get there?
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsyth Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
As humans, we ask ourselves all kinds of questions. But what if we were forced to ask ourselves a question every day that affected the outcome of the most basic things, the most important things in our lives? The question is, what is your sexual orientation or gender identity? And the answer is the difference between keeping your job or getting fired. The answer is the difference between staying in your home or getting evicted. The answer is the difference between receiving medical treatment or not. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against people based on their answer to this question. LGBT Americans have the right to say I do, but they don't have the same basic rights as everyone else. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Getting to know you.
Let me tell you about America Matters with Eddie Floyd. It comes on every Monday at noon. Don't want you to miss it. That's America Matters with Eddie Floyd.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to the fourth and final segment of today's Rush Hour. I am your host, Kelly Rush, and my special guest today is Rick Cornell. And Rick Cornell is a lawyer. He is a preeminent lawyer, actually, of 40 years here practicing in Northern Nevada, of doing appellate law of all different kinds. And you are also a writer.
Yeah, I've written a couple of novels. I wish I had more time to do it, but I wrote one called I Am That Fool that actually got a Next Generation Indie Book Award. That was pretty cool. Then the second novel, which I like better, but the critics didn't, which was called 2051, where I predicted the election of Donald Trump in kind of a joking way.
That's funny.
I know, never thinking it would happen, and here we are. Anyway.
So tell me kind of your whole kind of life trajectory. Where are you originally from, and how did you end up here? Are you a Nevada native?
Well, no. You may, if you've got a really keen ear, you might be able to tell where I'm from. I'm originally from the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a small town in Ohio, Solon, Ohio, actually.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I can remember at 4 years old pilfering my older brother's records and listening to things like Caravan and 16 Tons and Joe Stafford singing Jambalaya and of course every Kingston Trio record ever made. But anyway, I moved to California, to the Bay Area to be more precise, when I was 13. And I grew up in Lafayette, California from there and graduated from high school. And then I went to college at UC Irvine down in Orange County, graduated from there and went back to the Bay Area and went to law school at USF in San Francisco and got my law degree there. And I ended up in Nevada really by accident in 1978. My first job in San Francisco was a disaster, and they fired me, and there I was scrambling to try and find work, and the placement officer at USF said, well, I'm sure she said Nevada. There's a Nevada lawyer named Harry Claiborne who just got appointed to the bench. Send him a resume. And I did, and I was very lucky. I happened on several counts. Number one, Harry Claiborne wasn't one who liked to interview. Mine happened to be at the top of the stack, so he called me up and said, you're hired, which was really nice because at that point my confidence was so shot that if he had actually done anything like an interview, I probably would have made like David Letterman and given him the top 10 reasons not to hire me, you know. Anyway, he started in Reno. I was his first law clerk, and for anybody listening who's tied into any Nevada history from that time, he was an extremely colorful and very controversial judge. He was one who was indicted in the 80s, went to trial, was a hung jury, went back to trial, was convicted of tax evasion, and went to prison, and he was impeached and removed from office. And he was my favorite. It was my favorite job. What a guy. I mean, it was amazing. But anyway, that took me to Vegas for a year and a half, and a year and a half of Vegas was enough to convince me to come back to Reno, so I did. It was certainly enough to convince my ex-wife to come back to Reno, and she told me that I was welcome to join her and our son then, so we did. And I've been up here since 1980. I started in the DA's office for a little over a year, and then I worked for a little over 5 years for Bill Raggio in his firm, and then I went out on my own, and I've been a sole practitioner since December of 1986. So what's that, 33 years and counting that I've been on my own? Yeah. But as far as singing goes, I mean, I sang in junior high, sang in high school, had several, lead roles in our operettas or our school plays, almost straight out of Glee, right? And then I went to college, and actually one of the musicals that we did was The Music Man, and at that time my voice hadn't developed to where it is today, and so I sang in the Barbershop Quartet in that, and I was the second tenor, and we were really good. I mean, we had 4 really good singers, and that got me going on barbershopping. And I will say this, because I did that until 1990. You know, as corny as you may think that art form is, there is no better. I love barbershop. There is no better artistic venue for a singer than that for really learning how to listen to everybody around you and learning pitch. You have to be exactly on 880 cycles per second when you sing an A. Or be a little bit off if the others are a little bit off. You've got to be exactly right. And it was great training for me. I mean, it really was. Anyway, I sang in the local symphonic choir that's now the Philharmonic Choir for a few years. And then my ex-wife encouraged me actually to try out for the opera chorus. And boom, they hired me, or, I made it. And over the years, I got to sing a good number of roles with the Nevada Opera, which was great. Like the Commendatore and Don Giovanni, for example. Wow, what an experience that was. Or Baron Dufault in La Traviata. What a tremendous experience that was. And the light operas, get to sing Dick Deadeye in HMS Pinafore with funny role, and Samuel in the Pirates of Penzance, great role. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But then, like I said earlier, Nevada Opera died really unofficially in 2014, officially in 2016, and we went over to Popper. And actually, I liked that format because I liked the flexibility and the freedom to pick songs, like the ones that I'm doing in this show. And in fact, I'll tell you the story of one, and I'll sing it for you if you'd like. Mm-hmm. Of course you'd like. Yeah, sure. No. Very interesting song. This is a true folk song. You all know this song, but you may not know the backstory. It was a song that just appeared and developed by a bunch of anonymous coal miners in the Appalachians, in Kentucky and West Virginia and so forth. And then in 1946, a country singer named Merle Travis copywrote it. And he could get away with that because he added a 2-line lyric that are the most memorable in the song. St. Peter, don't you call me 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. You know what that referenced? The coal mine companies at that time were so corrupt that when they paid these miners for 12 hours of work a day and black lung disease decides, they didn't pay them in negotiable U.S. dollars. They paid them in script that could only be negotiated where? At their company store. And believe me, they didn't have Costco prices there. You wonder why the United Mine Workers came to be. That was one reason. In any event, the song, even though it was copywritten and sung by Merle Travis, wasn't super huge. And then somehow it got the attention of a Bristol, Tennessee DJ named Tennessee Ernie Ford, and became a finger-popping song that sold 20 million copies in 1955 and thereabouts. And it's a perfect song for a bass baritone like me, who can do, some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You're loading 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. There's our sounding. Enough of this. Slow down.
That's great. That's
so
great.
Yeah, I'll do that one. So many interesting stories. One that I'm going to do is Goodnight Irene. That was done in 1950. It was a #1 song in 1950. It was done by a group called the Weavers. You've probably never heard of the Weavers, but you've heard of their main guy, who was Pete Seeger, okay, the champion for social justice. And this song was not written by Seeger, any of them. It was written by Hughie Ledbetter, probably an unfamiliar name to you. His nickname you may know, Leadbelly. And in fact, what happened was the two curators of American folk music were brothers, John and Alan Lomax. They heard of Lead Belly. They went to see him in the Angola State Prison in Louisiana, where he was doing time for manslaughter. They recorded it somehow. They got the recording out. They sent it to the governor of Louisiana, who gave Lead Belly a pardon on account of the song. However, Lead Belly died in 1949, and the song went to #1 in 1950. There's so many stories like that out there. It just breaks your heart. But, you know, that's America for you. It's Americana. So anyway, that's another one, and I'll sing that song and have the audience sing along with me in real hootenanny style, right? So it's going to be a fun show. Now you've heard all the punchlines, but come and see it anyway. It's Saturday, February 8 at 7:30 at the Unitarian Church in Reno, 830 Del Monte Lane in Reno.
Yep, and tickets are available at paparanv.org, paparanv.org. And again, like Rick said, this is the Fabulous 50s, well, 1947 to 1963. And it's next Saturday, February 8th, and at 7:30. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Rick's shows are great. I got to take my mom to see him and two of his colleagues perform a Sinatra extravaganza, and that was a complete blast. So Rick is quite a character and a wonderful, wonderful performer. You heard just a little bit there, a little tease, and it just gets better from there. So he'll be on Oliver X's show tomorrow.
Yep.
Is that right?
A week from Friday.
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
A week from Friday. And so check that out as well. And he'll be on, of course, every Tuesday from 12 to 1 with Todd Torvinen and Bill Kendall. So check them out.
Hey, Dr. Phil here. I help people solve difficult and trying personal problems every day on my TV show. But there's one problem that's just got me stumped: childhood hunger. Nearly 16 million children in America struggle with it. That's 1 in 5 kids who may not know where their next meal is coming from, despite the fact that there's more than enough healthy, nutritious food out there to feed them all. Now, I don't know about you, but that is unacceptable.